Hello, everybody. It's so good to see you all. I'm scrolling through and get to see everybody's happy face. Ramona and Cynthia, thank you for waving. So good. Annie, Marty, Ellen. All right, Tom. All right, so let's get going. Are you ready for me, or do you have a few business you want to wrap up?
Well, okay. The only thing I just want to say is that we received a lot of questions in advance, so unfortunately we won't have time to get into any questions in the chat room. And Katie, welcome back. You're our own Katie, so we're just really glad you're back.
Well, thank you so much. And I'm so excited to see the Canyon Dems continuing. It's their amazing work. You guys have not let this pandemic slow you down or set you back. You've let it challenge you and make you more creative and continue to do the work that you've been doing for so many years. And so really, really excited. We have some great local candidates from your area, city council folks in places like Rancho Santa Margarita. Really, really excited about that. So great work in pursuing candidate recruitment and creating a really great environment for Democrats in your area. Real quick update on our campaign here in the 45th district, which most of you, but not all of you, live in. So a couple of challenges that we face, the biggest one of which is how we're going to engage University of California Irvine students. And when I talked about this the other day, Mike Levin said to me, oh my God, I hadn't really even thought about that yet. It's a real challenge. So we really counted on that university last year to deliver our winning margin. And when you look at how many votes we won by and how tight it was, that margin, that entire margin came from the campus. And so without those students, this is a tough race. I know that I'm talking to folks who have been represented by Greg Raths in the past. So I know that you all know that, it would be a very big change for our district to have someone like Greg in Congress as opposed to me. But without those students, it's an uphill battle. So we're working really hard to try to engage them. We're basically trying to chase them across the internet to wherever they have scattered to and make sure that they understand that they still have the right to vote here in the 45th Congressional District. And California law on this is very clear, but it's an outreach and engagement problem. And so some of you who went and knocked on doors in the dorms know that that's the best place to canvass. It's cool, it's air conditioned, it's shaded, it's flat, and there are a lot of Democrats. That territory is closed to us because there's probably only going to be around 5,000 students on campus as opposed to 30,000 plus. So what that means is we need to work even harder at engaging persuadable Republicans and swing voters, regardless of their party persuasion. So that's a big challenge. The other thing that we're dealing with is with no door-to-door operation, while we're doing a lot of texting and a lot of phone calling, thank you to everybody who's picked up the phone and been texting. We're getting great feedback from that work and making good progress. Without the door-to-door, there is more of a need to have media presence. And for those of us in Orange County, that is a real bummer because the Los Angeles media market is so brutally expensive. So I was talking to a candidate the other day from the Atlanta area, and the candidate was saying, well, my media market's really expensive. And I said, I don't think you should say that to me because my TV is 4 times more expensive than hers. And she has the 4th highest media market in the country. But the gap between kind of New York and LA and everywhere else for media is really, really big. And the good news is people are watching more TV. They're opening their mail, they're reading their mail. But we do have to get up there and get on TV, and that is a big push. So thank you for your support, for your time, for your resources, for doing everything you can. On the bright side, I have an amazing campaign team. I hope you get the chance to know them virtually, and really excited about the work that Jackie and Sophia are doing. We have 2 Sophias. We try to call one Sophie. that Jackie and Sophie are doing on digital organizing and outreach and field program. We have a great finance team that's continuing to raise the resources that we're going to need to win. We have an amazing Digidem and some great organizers. We're making a big push to organize in the API community. We did that last time. We have to keep doing it. A lot of those folks are less frequent voters. They engaged in 2018. We want to make sure they engage in 2020. The other bright side is we have a fantastic registrar of voters who is really working hard to plan ahead. And really, if you compare how our registrar of voters has dealt with this pandemic to the way our president has dealt with this pandemic, it is just a shocking contrast. Our registrar of voters began to plan back in February and March for what it might mean to help people vote safely. He's wrote a terrific report. He's done everything from buying extra paper, anticipating that he'll have to print more ballots and that ballots will get sent to the wrong place, to really making sure moving voting locations to larger and more spacious locations that have better ventilation. So he's really doing his part to make sure that everybody in Orange County can vote safely. And one of the most important messages that we have to carry forward collectively is, with so much concern nationally about voting, whether it's safe, whether your vote's going to be counted, misinformation, we have to keep reaffirming to our community that their vote will count, that our registrar of voters is fair, is hardworking, is a dedicated public servant. And no matter what your party preference is, if you are entitled and eligible to legally vote, he will work to make sure you have an opportunity to do so and that it's counted fairly. And so we need to make sure that we're locally here making people aware and pushing back against some of some of the problems that are very, very real on a national level, even as I'm trying to work on some of those at the national level, including by doing things like pushing this Postmaster General to explain, you have no explanation for how you ruined our postal system. Why should I think you have any hope of fixing it in the next few weeks? And all we really extracted from him was a promise that he won't make it worse between now and November, and that's not good enough. But make sure that people locally know about their options. And you guys do a wonderful job of that, but that's an area where we can use outreach and touches even to registered Democrats and reliable Democratic voters, and particularly to younger people, because they typically prefer to vote in person. So those who are historically most comfortable with voting by mail are older, whiter, more conservative leaning. So moving to a more heavily mail environment doesn't necessarily favor us, although we obviously want everybody to have that option to vote safely in the upcoming election. So with that, I could talk to you, Canyon Dems, forever, but I know you have a million questions, so let's hear some of them.
I always forget to unmute myself. Katie, here's the first one. Should Senator Kamala Harris be installed as our next vice president, Governor Newsom will have the task of naming a replacement to finish out her current term. Who do you think would be the wisest choice for this position? And you knew this was coming, would you agree to serve in this capacity if he selected you?
No comment.
Okay.
Look, we are so lucky in California to have tremendous political talent. And we have folks who have a range of experiences, from being in office for a long time to being relative newcomers. We have people in every different pocket of this state. We have Democrats to choose from in Northern California, in the Central Valley, even in Orange County. We have a lot of great folks. The governor has his hands really full right now. I have so much appreciation for what he's doing. So his responsiveness, when I've reached out to him about really, about concerns here with testing, with trying to understand what the rules are, making sure we have clarity, making sure that our county health officer is communicating consistently with his guidelines. I recently talked to the governor's office about the opening up of our playgrounds, which is really an important thing for our kids to have a place to go. They're cooped up. We know that outdoor activity is safer than indoor activity. And that's directing a lot of our events. So I will just tell you that, we're lucky in California to have so many good choices. The other thing I just want to say is I'm so excited about Kamala. I'm so excited for her, for our country, what it means to have a woman of color who will be our next vice president. And it is coming at it's overdue, but it's also coming at such an important time. And it's been exciting to see the energy that she's added to the ticket and to the Democratic Party. And I'm looking forward to what that has to hold. So between now and November, full steam ahead, working on my campaign, working on continuing to represent the district. We have a lot of legislative days left between now and November in which we have really important work to get done, including funding the government to avoid the kind of disastrous shutdown that I walked into when I was sworn in. So that's really where I'm focusing.
Mm-hmm. Katie, here's another one. Thanks for your skilled questioning of Postmaster DeJoy last week. Has he provided you the name who ordered the changes at the USPS, since he apparently had no idea when you asked him?
He has not given me the name. And for those who didn't see it, I go last. This is one of the nice things. It's a benefit of being the most junior member of the Oversight Committee, because I just joined in January. There are 40 members, 23 Democrats and 17 Republicans who go ahead of me. And they had all pressed him on, why did you make these changes? They kept asking him, why did you do this? What did you think would happen? And he kept saying back, I didn't do it. But nobody had asked him, well, if it wasn't you, who was it? And when I asked him, he replied, I don't know, which either means he lied to the committee or he's running an organization that he has, and he's the leader, and he has no idea who is making tremendous changes that have huge operational effects. Either way, we are in a world of trouble. So the Oversight Committee staff are incredibly talented. They're following up. We're going to send a letter. I have to look at it. It's sitting in my inbox to edit now. But we're going to continue to hold them accountable. Equally important, and this is something I took from the hearing, equally important is holding the U.S. Postal Service Board of Directors accountable. Because they put DeJoy in, and they are going to be the ones who are going to have to remove DeJoy. And I asked the Postmaster General if the Inspector General, because again, everyone had asked him, did you commit misconduct? And his response was, that's for the Inspector General to decide. My last question to him was, if the Inspector General finds that you engaged in misconduct, will you resign? No, was his response. So what this means is we need to start pressing the bipartisan U.S. Postal Service Board of Directors to do its job. When they heard DeJoy say he didn't know who made these changes, they should be pressing immediately, and we need to get answers from them. Excuse me, about who made these changes. Just 1 second. Sorry, I've been going for 8 hours straight, and my voice is going a little bit. So it's really, really important that we push forward on this. The bright side of the post office is the problems there are relatively straightforward to fix. When we elect Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, when we win the Senate, and when we win the House, we know exactly what we need to do to fix the Postal Service. We need to remove the requirement that they pre-fund 50 years of retirement and health benefits. That's not a burden that any large corporation in this country could bear. So that was deliberate sabotage of our Postal Service. We do need to make sure that they are running a stable, conservative, fiscally responsible pension system, but it's a pretty straightforward fix. That plus allowing the Postal Service to innovate. And the people in the Postal Service are thoughtful and talented. They have tremendous potential, but they have been beaten back now for 20 plus years. And it's been an ongoing war. And the last thing I just want to say, I'm sorry, but I get really fired up about the post office. The last thing I want to say is postal issues are veterans issues. And when you're talking to people about this, it's really important to help them understand, especially more conservative leaning people. The United States Postal Service employs over 100,000 veterans, the majority of whom are disabled. Those are good, high-paying jobs for people who served our country, and they continue to serve our country in the Postal Service. The VA delivers 80% of its prescription medicine by mail. So when our Postal Service is slowed down, our vets aren't getting life-saving medication. Our veterans count on our service members, count on the Postal Service to be able to vote when they're serving overseas. And last but not least, service members have told me how much it meant to them to get letters, packages, and things from loved ones when they are serving their tours of duty. So we need to help understand that an attack on the Postal Service is also an attack on the well-being of our veterans and service members. And that is a really important way to depoliticize what Trump has tried to politicize with the post office and focus people in on the consequences.
Thank you, Katie. The next one is, you are so well suited for your service on the Committee on Financial Services and on the Committee on Oversight and Reform. When you return to Washington to begin your next term, what committee assignments would you like to have? And would these assignments be in lieu of or in addition to your current assignments?
Good question. I have to say, I started to think about this a little bit. A colleague called me to ask me what I thought for some advice about their committees for next year. And I thought to myself, I've got bigger problems like getting reelected here in Orange County. But I will say this, you will have to pry my cold, dead body out of the Oversight Committee. I love oversight. It is so rewarding. It is an incredible opportunity to reach across different issue areas and to learn about new issues, which helps me better serve our community. And it's also such an important part of the structure of our democracy. And I think one thing this president has shown time and time again is that those checks and balances are fragile. And that if Congress isn't really expanding what its portfolio is, there's a danger that the executive will absorb everything else. And so that oversight function is so critically important. And I love it. And I think a lot of my colleagues, traditionally oversight isn't this, it's not a committee that people want. That's partly how I got on it as a freshman. It is so rewarding. And the staff are Mr. Cummings' former staff. They all stayed on. The new chair kept them. These people are really warriors for truth. They're warriors for effective government. And I think particularly in an area like Orange County, where I represent roughly equal numbers of Democrats, Republicans, and no party preference voters, this is an area that allows me to truly say that I'm serving the interests of every one of my constituents by protecting our taxpayer dollars, by fighting for honesty, by doing the hard work of figuring out what's working and what's not working in our government. So I suspect that I'll stick with those two committees. I don't know for sure, but count on me to stay on oversight no matter what.
Thanks, Katie. What potential legislation would you introduce if you were reelected?
So there's going to be a bunch of things that we passed out of the House that did not pass the Senate, which is where great bipartisan ideas go to stall out. So there's going to be a number of bills that we bring back. One of the things that I've been focusing on right from when I first got to Congress that I'm still very focused on today is mental health issues. And I had as my State of the Union guest this past January, Dr. Heather Hutze, who's the chief psychologist of CHOC and runs their pediatric mental health program. And so there's a real need to enforce the existing law with regard to mental health and insurance coverage. That was part of the Affordable Care Act, but we haven't delivered on that promise. Insurance companies have figured out ways to evade. There's really low reimbursement rates, which has led to a shortage of providers and long wait time. There are a lot of issues with and I have bills on those things. There are problems on college campuses with inconsistent and unclear guidance on how college students should support students who have mental health issues. A lot of times colleges ask them to leave campus rather than dealing with their disability or mental health issue in place. So colleges want some clarity around what they need to do. And of course, this pandemic, there is another silent pandemic here of mental health issues. Everything from grief, from loss of a loved one, to anxiety, worry about walking into a workplace where you could be exposed to the isolation that so many of us, but most particularly young children and seniors, are dealing with. So that is going to remain a huge, huge issue and a big priority for me going forward. And every dollar that we invest in effectively treating and diagnosing mental health redounds in to our benefit. It reduces healthcare costs ultimately. It reduces rates of disability. It allows people to work productively and stay healthy. And so it's a great issue for me to work on, and it's one I intend to absolutely not miss a beat as we go into the next Congress.
Sorry. Thank you, Katie. The census has been very politicized this year. What concerns do you have and what actions can be taken? I know the House has passed legislation to extend time for the count at the request of census officials. It is stalled in the Senate. Would a grassroots effort raising this issue help? It seemed to help get some movement on the post office.
So look, I think we should always be asking our government officials to do what's right. But I think at this point with the census, the current deadline set for September 30th. And so what I'm really focusing on is making sure that I'm partnering with every community organization I can to get that number up. And we have a pretty good census response rate here in the 45th district. It's over 77%. And the state of California just made a commitment, even in a really difficult budget environment, to spend money on census outreach. So we have a really good partner there. My staff and I have talked about doing a census challenge, challenging other Congress members here in California, because we are not the highest yet in the 45th district, but we are going to get there in the next 29 days. And then also I had a conversation this morning with University of California, Irvine. The two census tracts with the biggest gap in reporting, comparing 2010 to 2020, are both around the campus and on the campus. And the campus said they made what's called an aggregate report. So for example, nursing home residents, the nursing home can report for everybody rather than making individual nursing home residents. So the campus said they reported, but somehow we're short like 20,000 people. So I asked them to go back to take a look at what they did, to consult with UCOP, to try to make sure that we're correctly counting every person who's on that campus. And so that's where the biggest problem is right now, is actually around our campus. But make sure, when you're calling people and you're asking them to vote or register to vote, make sure you ask them if they completed the census. It's an easy add-on to ask them to do, and emphasize that the census is 100% confidential. There are criminal penalties to disclosing it. And it really is a very short questionnaire, as we all know here, because I know, and I'm looking at every one of you, that you have all already done your census, and that you have made sure your children and husbands and ex-husbands and whatever, second cousins, and the third cousin once removed who votes for Donald Trump, that everybody has completed their census. So it's really, really important that we do that, but we are doing a good job here. Nationally, it's been harder in some districts. Some states are not putting resources into the census budget, but the oversight hearings we've had on the census, I think, has helped. We've been getting answers from Director Dillingham. And for example, I asked him in a Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus meeting where I'm a member, if we could get the census by congressional district. And he tried to say no, we pushed back, we got him to say yes. And that's what's enabling Congress members to track the census response rate and then try to be part of the solution. So make sure you're asking every voter when you're making calls that you're also asking them to complete their census. September 30th. It's really important for the state of California, and it's so important for Orange County.
Thank you, Katie. Is your campaign coordinating your response to the UCI outreach with Dave Min and Melissa Fox, who also need the student vote?
Yep. So we are in touch with all of those campaigns and really excited. I think both Dave and Melissa are going to win. I think they're doing a terrific job. So our field team is in touch with those folks. It's a little bit different because we're not necessarily carrying lit in the traditional way. It's more of a coordinating the digital outreach. But absolutely, we're in touch. I'm doing an event with Melissa tomorrow. Dave and I have shared things from polling with each other. But the campus, I talked with the campus today to learn what they're doing in my official capacity. I asked them generally about what they're doing to engage voters. And one of the real problems is student mailboxes. And if the ballot goes there and the student did not set up mail forwarding, there the ballot will stay, right? And so I asked them today to take a look at how their campus does mail delivery, because the so-called last mile of mail for campus is actually done by UCI. So it comes into a central process at UCI, and then it gets put in the student mailboxes. And so we continue to talk with them. And I know that they've had their walkthrough with the registrar of voters. They're putting in a ballot drop box on campus, which they did not have in the primary. So I'm very excited about that. That's going to be helpful. But we are working to chase these students across the internet. And when we find them, we're going to make sure they understand the importance of voting all the way down the ballot.
Okay, thank you, Katie. With some of the recent politicization of the CDC and the FDA guidelines, is the House considering any kind of legislation to ensure that guidance to reopen sectors of the economy are based on science and not political expedience, or that the testing of COVID-19 treatments and or the vaccination have been properly tested rather than rushed out to benefit a political agenda?
This is such an important question. And we definitely are pressing these folks. It's been hard to get them into hearing rooms, partly because they've been using the fact that they're busy with COVID as an excuse for why they can't appear to tell us what they're doing about COVID. So it's a little bit of a vicious circle there. I was on a call recently with Dr. Fauci. He mentioned an op-ed that Dr. Hahn had put out about promising to keep it free from political influence. But I have to tell you, this is a big concern of mine with the vaccine development. Dr. Slawi, who has been tasked by President Trump with the vaccine development, has some significant conflicts of interest, financial investments in those who are working to be part of coming up with a vaccine. It will not protect us to have a vaccine if the American people do not trust that it is safe and effective, because they simply will not get vaccinated. And that's going to be a long and slow process no matter what, but we cannot afford to lose that initial public opinion by having the American people have any questions, any doubt that vaccine was tested according to scientific standards and nothing but scientific standards. So I think there's a lot of work to still be done on this with the Trump officials, and making sure that we're allowing people like Dr. Fauci to do his job, and that we're protecting them from political influence. But this administration is a challenge in that regard, no doubt about it. So the Oversight Committee is hard at work. Health and the Energy and Commerce Committee is working hard, but it is difficult. I think the American people's confidence is rattled by the president's pandemic response and lack thereof.
Katie, thank you so much. We are considerate of your time, and we know that you've given us the amount that your staff said. And we've also been reading that you're all over the place all the time, and that you're Zooming, and that it's really hard for you. So we just really, really appreciate you taking the time out to come and talk to us. It's very heartwarming to have personal time with you, and we don't want to keep you beyond the time that we were given.
Well, Canyon Dems, you are a wonderful group. You are fabulous constituents and activists. And it's really great for me to see all your faces. I miss getting to see you, and it's great to be able to join with you virtually. I am working very hard. My 3 children are in Zoom school, and teachers are working so hard to try to develop curriculum and entertain them and teach them, make sure they don't fall behind. But it's tough for working families right now. It's tough for working parents. And this pandemic is presenting new challenges. I'm also working really hard to make sure that we win in every pocket of this country, including right here in Orange County and in every pocket of our district. And so that means doing a lot of events to help support others, other House candidates, local candidates, the Biden campaign. I'm trying to be everywhere that I can be. We have 63, I believe, more days, and it just can't come soon enough. So thank you for what each one of you is doing, for leaving nothing on the table, for putting our democracy first, and for being champions. It's my honor to fight alongside you, and I'm really grateful for the chance to spend this evening with you. So thank you, everyone, so much.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you so much.